Four.
You're live, baby. Okay. So we are here. This is another debrief. We're just grabbed a few people who've had an amazing experience at the White Privilege Conference. Even when I say those words, I didn't realize what this is my first one. I didn't realize what an amazing experience this was going to be. I'm Tracy Harrell. I'm here representing myself, but I'm also partnering with the beautiful lady to the right, Miss Melanie Denise Cunningham. Thank you very much. The three of you are in the shot. We have Eddie Moore here, who I met through you. And Eddie, can you tell people right now, you're in day 2, really day 3 of this experience, and you have something called the Privilege Institute, which isn't about just a conference, it's about changing the status quo. So just real quick, if you had to examine why other people should join us as a part of the Institute, what would you say?
Really, the Institute's primary function is to help folks who have a lot to do a lot. We want people to give back in the scale in which they receive. And so for some folks, that could be volunteer hours. For some folks, that could be some kind of serving in reference to time on a board. And for some folks, that could be resources. Our motto is, if you have a lot, you should do a lot. And that's what we're asking people to consider when they think about joining the Privilege Institute.
I love it. So this conference, you're in the 24th year. You're in day 3. How are you feeling right now?
Day 3 feels like you're almost at the peak of the summit. So just getting to this moment has been a climb. It's been a grind. And so right about this time, you start to feel like, almost like you could see the light at the end of the horizon. But I don't want this to be a conference where people take the last day lightly. So we have a phenomenal kickoff to the keynote.
Yes.
And we have a phenomenal number of sessions lined up so that if people do leave early, we want them to regret it. Because we want you here for the entire experience. It's not a 1-day conference. It's not a 2-day conference. It's a 3-day conference. And if you can't commit that, then don't come here.
Wow.
So this is the kind of environment we want to create, that people are committed to doing the time around the work so that we can go back and do the work.
Now, the thing that really fascinated me is that you have such high caliber sessions. This handsome gentleman to your left, what's your name again?
Jamie Washington.
Washington. I walked into your session, I thought, see, these are my people. Can you tell us a little bit about, you were talking about change, and just tell us a little bit about who you are and what you wanted people to get out of your session today.
Thank you. I'm Jamie Washington, and my pronouns are he, him, and his, and I join you from the ancestral homelands of the Piscataway tribal nations in the Baltimore, Washington area. I'm the president of the Washington Consulting Group and president and co-founder of the Social Justice Training Institute. We have been partnering and partners with Dr. Eddie Moore Jr., my brother here in the White Privilege Conference, for 24 years. I ain't new to, we true to this, right?
Not new to this, but true to this.
We've been in this for a minute. And the work is recognizing that culture change and transformation is a process. And we have been in the process of moving this from just statements. And so the session I did was beyond diversity statements to culture transformation and change. And so what we know that in these last 3 years, we had an opportunity to see spotlight on the importance of this work. And as a result, there's a lot of folks who are just calling themselves anti-racist, we're doing all the things and not really knowing what all that means. The White Privilege Conference gives us an opportunity to dig deeper, to really look at what that means for us. And the session that I did was about
focusing on culture change, digging deep, making this really about longevity. I'm going to come back to you in a second, because the reason I put you here, Miss Melanie, is that you're leading also work that's long-term, right? We know that this conference is going to be in Washington State in 2025, and we got a series of things that we're doing to build up to continuing to enhance what it looks like to be in this work, to really drive change, to change your culture. So who are you, and what would you say you want people to know about why this work is about longevity? It's about being in the game, not just events, but actually true culture change?
Let me put my glasses on.
Please. Zoom in.
And first of all, I want to say that this is Dr. Eddie Moore.
Yes.
Dr. Jamie Washington. And I give all respect to those titles because they've studied hard. This is not something that you just wake up one day and say, oh, I'm going to do a social justice training institute, or I'm going to do a white privilege conference. This is scholarly work. This is practitioner work, and we are serious about it. And so I come to you from the state of Washington. I'm at Pacific Lutheran University, and I will be the newly appointed director of a newly created program called the Anti-Racist Leadership Program. And so in 2025, when the White Privilege Conference convenes in Tacoma, that will be collaborative work. So I'm looking forward to all of this. Why is it important? It's important because we've got to know where we're rooted. And I'm going to follow up on what Dr. Washington said. All of a sudden now, after we saw George Floyd murdered in our face, there's lots of people jumping into this equity and inclusion space with no skin in the game. And that can't be allowed because those are gatekeepers and they continue to perpetuate the systems that we are trying to dismantle. And so I look forward to having these conferences and these kind of convenings because the folks that are out in the world doing the work get a chance to rejuvenate and recharge because this work is not easy. So we get to see best practices and our best presenters out forward, letting us know what we've got to deal with, keeping us mindful. But we also get a chance to hug on and love on each other, recharge ourselves, and get back out in the streets and, bring the truth. So I'm extremely grateful for this opportunity to be among greatness, to be able to sit next to greatness and learn from them. But just think about putting all of our minds together. We are a force to be reckoned.
I love it. Dr. Eddie, you're looking so calm and peaceful. You have actually been in this game for 24 years. Dr. Eddie Moore, exactly. You've been doing this particular conference for 24 years. And for you, I've heard you say that it was about impact. We have a couple people who attended some of the sessions. So we're going to go to them real quick to talk about their impact and what they experienced today and some of their lessons learned. But what would you say if, again, we're doing this work, we're inviting people who may feel uncomfortable even with the title White Privilege Conference. They may not even want to accept that that's a thing because this is really about all privilege, right? Because we all have privilege in some way. And I love the fact that you mentioned we're leading with love. There's no attacking. This is about really what can we do to really educate ourselves and then move forward. So any words of wisdom that you want to share with someone who is they consider themselves an ally, but maybe they realize they're not being as intentional on a regular basis as they could be, perhaps.
Yeah. I think we just feel like we've had a period of watering down the word of diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging. I mean, we have new terms, added terms, and I think the rigor associated with those terms has been lowered, in my opinion. That it takes less to earn that title. And so I think really the White Privilege Conference is a consistent reminder that if you're committed to doing the work at the highest level, there is a space and place. You got to spend some time.
Yes.
And so it's almost like you can't just say, I went to the University of, or I participated in a graduate course at. I mean, people want to know and see what that certification looks like, what the rigor, the hours of commitment look like. And I think that's what I'm wanting to establish, that when people say they become anti-racist, right? I feel we should have something that they say they were a part of to get there in that journey. SJTI, possibly some of the coursework involved in what Dr. Cunningham is creating in the newly developing anti-racist leadership framework. Possibly the white, but there's evidence. We can't let people keep talking about diversity and not showing evidence of doing diversity. And what white privilege conferences, it's CrossFit diversity. It's a space and place we feel that when people say they've gone here and gone over years, right, that they're showing a real commitment. Right. And this is even people who've been presenting for 20 years, 25 years. Because Jamie's not showing up here just to present, right? Melanie's not showing up just to share her work or her new job title or them sparkling new fly eyeglasses, right? No, they're doing sessions and they're in sessions. And I think that's a model, a module that we have got to present for this next 25 years of what it means to be becoming anti-racist or committed to anti-racist.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So again, we talked about your session today, and I was there. I came in just at the very end, and I was like, "Oh my God, these are my people!" I was so impressed. So we're gonna do some more deep dives. I mean, literally, I think the thing that I'm offering you is really a commitment to bring these conversations back with a level of regularity, right? Revisiting them online on social media, putting some conversations out there so people see and hear the things that are going to help to elevate. So I just want to say thank you to you for bringing this amazing group together, but thank you to you also for showing up with a different level of awareness and accountability. So real quick, what was the title of your session again today?
Beyond Diversity Statements, Creating Culture Change and Transformation.
Okay, so we actually led a session. I'm past president of the National Black MBA Association. We actually led a session that was, our series is called right now Better Together. When you say beyond diversity statements, we had a whole series last year that was called Unapologetically Black, Living Beyond the Hashtag. Because again, there was a lot of hashtags, right? So you said the things, but what were you doing differently? I have someone here who attended your session. What do you want people to do differently? So if you're at a company right now, you said it in your session, you're at a company right now, I heard you say that you really can't expect someone to go from clueless, which oftentimes which is where we start because we're not really taught like the legislation and the things that have kind of led to where we are in this country, but someone who really doesn't know to where we want them to be. Like you talked about the journey, the importance of us learning and caring and not attacking and not pointing fingers, but really creating a space where people want to be involved. I saw this handsome dude and I was like, hey, we need a white man in the room. Can you join us? And he was like, I'm in. Really? I'm in. I'm showing up. And that in itself is a win. So what would you say to someone who's in a space where their company really is talking about it, but they're not being about it?
Well, see, so what you're naming, and I appreciate this, Doc, is this whole dynamic of really recognizing that we have to reframe the narrative of just doing stuff and then holding people accountable and making statements and then saying folks are going to be accountable if they don't do, right? When we haven't helped them to build the capacity to be able to do it.
See, right? Can you pause? Because that's what this lady over here is doing. Her work is around building capacity. That's what he's been doing for 24 years, building capacity. Let's talk about what that actually means, building capacity. So if you've been doing the work, just stay there a little bit more, go deeper about what it means to build capacity.
So if we just do the lens of race, it means being able to keep race in the room.
Yes.
Right. And allowing that as we do, well, maybe that wasn't about race to be a possibility. Maybe it was. So we just don't take race off the table. Everything doesn't start necessarily with race, but can we keep it in the room and on the table as a possibility? And so if I can hold, well, maybe he didn't sit by me. Maybe the reason that he didn't sit by me isn't because he was uncomfortable sitting next to a black man. But maybe the reason he didn't sit by me is because he was uncomfortable sitting next to a black man. And what does that mean? To consider the possibility of how race matters. And when not only can white people hold that, but when we as BIPOC folks can hold that, because white supremacy culture has had us take race off the table.
That's right.
Right.
Preach.
So we get uncomfortable with having a race analysis around why things happen and occur, and the patterns continue to happen, and the system remains in place. So building capacity means, well, let me see what that really was about in me. And I don't think it was about that, but maybe some of that was, and unconsciously, I went here because that is what was going on for me. And as I'm able to keep it in the room, then I can do the work around making different choices. If I can't keep it on the table, then I can't find it in me. I can't talk about it. So building capacity.
I love it.
That's just an example.
I love
of
it.
building capacity.
I love it. You also talked about culture change, and you had 3 phases of culture change. And I see you nodding your head over there because the room was lit up. I mean, it was very surface. You couldn't get this deep, but you were like, but what you said wasn't surface in the sense that, but you could go deeper. It was clear that you were dropping nuggets and the whole room was lit up. So tell us a little bit more about these phases of culture change. So when he talks about this is a journey, when he says come and be committed to 3 days or 4 days, and she says, hey, there's some ongoing work that's happening. Tell us about the phases of culture, because I think when people understand that it is about an ongoing journey. Tell us about that.
Right. So again, anyone who's done any work around culture change and transformation recognizes that culture change doesn't happen overnight.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
It is a process. And if you are attempting to shift a culture, right? So if you're in a culture where this is the way we do, and so that culture is written, unwritten, rules, practices, policies, ways we engage, all of those things.
Yes.
And those things get embedded over time, right? So we don't even recognize them. And so if we're attempting to shift that, right? If we want to no longer be a culture that simply honors the voices of, right, a particular population, then it takes things to recognize how does that show up in the culture, right? How does that show up in our hiring? How does that show up in our promotions and our tenure, and who gets opportunities and who doesn't get opportunities? How does it show up in the ways in which we even celebrate people's birthdays and all of the kinds of things? Who did we forget and who don't we forget? So what's in the culture that supports some people being seen and heard and others not? The process to that starts with a value. So we have to first say that we value all people in the culture. This is a value-based discussion, and pretending like it's not value-based really has us off kilter. So, it's like, well, that's just leftist values. Okay. If you want to put it in a leftist place, I'm all right with that. But I do enter unapologetically around all of us mattering. And so as we talk about shifting the culture, we have to start with clear value and name that, right? And then from that place, then begin to engage. How is our culture out of alignment with what we say value?
See. You got an amen corner over here.
Oh, begin to do the practices to help us to move from that. So I talk about 3 stages, and I'm just going to do this real quick. So the first stage is startup. The second stage is capacity building. The third stage is culture change and transformation. Right? And I don't even put it out as the one and only.
No, for sure. For sure.
Yes. But understanding culture change with an anti-racism and DEIB lens is the work for the next round.
I love it. I'm gonna have you define one more word, and then we're gonna talk to you real quick. But define, and let's talk about the word transformation. That's the work that I do, right? I focus on leadership, but transformational leadership, inclusive leadership. So let's talk about the word transformation. These people are trying to transform hearts and minds to transform the systems. It's about change, not change. Because once you transform from a butterfly, from a moth to a butterfly, you can never go back.
You got it. Your name.
So let's talk about transformation.
So transformation is different than change.
Yes.
Because I can change something and change can be returned. You can go back to the way that it was. And often change is compliance.
Yes.
Right.
The whole room, see? His whole session was a bunch of these dropping nuggets. Can you repeat that? I mean, the whole room was lit up. Say it again.
Do what we need to do to get by
Mm,
in a change framework.
see.
Transformation does require attitude, heart, mind, and practice.
Mm,
Right? So it's a mindset that begins to recognize the value of and why this matters and it isn't. And so that I can no longer be. I see this all the time where people just stop using words. Is a change thing. When you hear the words and it gets under your skin, when you hear yourself say the words and it's no longer okay, then you're in a transformation process.
I love you.
So,
That's so good. So good. Now, I saw you over here smiling. You were humming it. Can you tell us who you are? Tell us about your experience with the White Privilege Conference while you're here. And then what were the key takeaways from his session?
Sure. My name's Scott Shue, and it's a ridiculous honor to even be at this table right now. I would have put on a nicer shirt. Next to these well-dressed people. I come from a K through 12 independent school in Atlanta, Georgia, and the idea of putting an anti-racist practice rather than just declaring this is what we stand for as an institution. So we hope, come join us, come on, we're super inclusive. It's on our website, and we have it on a sign, and we have Black Lives Matter, and we're an anti-racist school, but then they show up, and the white teachers are scared. White teachers don't want to touch it because as soon as I bring up race, then people are going to ask me questions about it, and I'm not really sure how to respond because I'm not even really sure that I understand my own whiteness. And so I come to conferences like this, trying to do my own work in to unpack my own whiteness, because it turns out that's part of this system. The whiteness created the system. The white supremacy culture is part of creating the kind of oppression that these kids grew up learning. And if a 7-year-old, a 9-year-old, a 12-year-old doesn't understand what the system looks like and why they're in it, then it's very hard for another generation to even understand how to be empathetic. And without empathy, without trying to raise a kid who can look around and identify and unpack their own identity, then it's going to be impossible for them to make a change, especially when they had privilege in the first place. I'm a man. I'm a white man of privilege, and when it occurred to me that I was a white man of privilege, I looked around and I said, this doesn't make sense then for little kids in my class to not know that they're white. And then, we have 30% people of color at our school, but that means that every black and brown kid that comes into our classroom will be in the minority of every class they go to in K through 12. And that is something that can, if not handled properly, will create trauma. And this is, blackness is a trauma going back generation after generation after generation. They hold that inside of them. And as a white dude, it's going to land to the white kid differently from me than Dr. Washington brought up, because the white kids, as I understand, say, oh, this black dude's going to talk about race. That makes sense. All of a sudden, Shoop's going to talk about, wait, I'm supposed to talk about race. I'm not part of the race. I'm not part of race. Black is race. And I was told that as a young boy. Black means race. Oh, you're talking about black people, right? And it wasn't until I was in my late teens, which is an abomination of things. It's my job, it's my responsibility as an educator, and more importantly, as a human being, to make sure that my white brothers and sisters understand what their whiteness means, and to not just perform, to not just to say, I'm an anti-racist, but I'm going to go home and I'm not going to even think about it again because I don't have to because I'm privileged. It's important to make sure that it's in our classrooms, not just on the after-school program. Make sure that every teacher a math teacher, a science teacher is like, oh, I teach math, so I don't have to deal with it. Oh no, you're not teaching your content. You're teaching the human being. That human being can't understand what you're teaching them unless they understand who they are in the first place. And that social identity is how we experience the world. It identifies and it's actually part of how we experience the world. And if we don't understand what that means, then it's going to be hard to learn it.
I love it. I love it. Now, the session that he attended, I saw you come up to him at the end and you congratulated him or thanked him. What were the key learnings from his session?
Yeah, I mean, the key learnings was number one. I mean, the idea of once you understand what the group should look like, and once we say, okay, who's ready to do this work, and how are we going to put it into practice as day to day? It's not going to, like you said, it's not going to take place overnight.
Right.
And so you have to push back and say, like, wait, do our leaders, are they going to buy into this?
Mm-hmm.
If they don't buy in, we can't go on. And that startup process, I love what I said, like most institutions, predominantly white institutions, don't get past the first startup phase. They don't get past that at all. They can't start to make changes or transformation at all unless they can acknowledge and then decide to implement those policies in the classroom. And so ultimately that 7 to 10 years on the low end of what transformation is really going to look like, and to leave that for that whoever comes in next, will make it impossible to dismantle it.
Wow. So much more we can unpack, but we're going to pay in this way. I know it's dinner time. Ladies, real quick. I said this was going to be quick, but this is so good. So scooch a little closer, y'all, real quick, so I can get all three of y'all in the shot together. So you also attended some sessions today. What were your key learnings? Thank you so much for that. What were your key learnings, my darling? Introduce yourself and tell us, why are you here, first of all? Is this your first experience with WPC?
My name is Natasha Sanders, and I am a Texan representing Comadre Speakers Collaborative. This is my second experience at White Privilege Conference, and I say it is a conference, but it is more of an experience. If people come here and leave not wanting to continue what they have learned, then I question their presence. Like, were you really in the room? Were you really present? Did you hear anything that was being said? Because whether you attended a keynote and just got so saturated that you didn't have the capacity to attend any workshops the rest of the day, or whether you were in workshops back to back to back to back, whatever you heard in any given space you were in at this white privilege experience should have been enough to catapult you for the next year. And so what I say, when I came first last year was in Charlotte, and I was trying to decide if I wanted to do my doctoral research on the impact of white supremacy on white-bodied individuals who call themselves Christians. And so I decided to just go for it and do it. And so that's what I'm doing. And what I have found is how Christians continue to hold up white supremacist ideation. And they do it under the guise of, like my friend over here was just saying, that they don't own their racial identity of whiteness. And a part of it comes from them not knowing who they are. Like, are you really white? No, you're probably German, Italian, Irish, but it was stripped away. And so I think the quicker we learn as a society what white supremacist ideation has taken from us, the better we will be, because it costs everybody everything. I appreciate the first words that came out of Dr. Moore's mouth when he got to the microphone in Charlotte was, "This space is unapologetically Black." And I was like, yes, King, say all the things. The second thing I appreciated was the all gender race room. So I just appreciate White Privilege Conference as an experience, and also as a place to come and get rejuvenated for the journey that is ahead of us, because as the doctor said earlier, this is not an easy work, but it's the work that we are in. Like, there is no checkbox. There is no, I said I attended this little thing, so I'm good for the year. No, this is not that. And that's something that white supremacy has dealt us that doesn't belong to us. But we can, at this conference, we learned that we can say no to that, and we get tools in these sessions that we can take and learn and teach other people. And so we know that we're not in it alone, and it gives us common language to keep moving forward. So,
And I want to just piggyback on this, because Dr. Moore, I want to tell you, I love when people say, "Where you going?" And I say, "I'm going to the White Privilege Conference." I love the reaction. I love the reaction. They're like, or you know, my PC friends will be, I'm curious to know what that
Tell me
is.
more.
Tell me more. But what this experience that you created for us makes us unapologetic, and then we can, you know, from my church perspective, I can say we can minister to people and say, you know, this is a convening of scholars and activists and educators, and we're coming to elevate ourselves, our minds, because when you control a man's thinking, didn't Carter G. Woodson tell us you don't have to worry about his actions. And so the fact that we are intentionally, because folks choose, most folks choose to come here, not being voluntold. Yeah. And so the fact that you are choosing to come means the experience is that much richer. Your challenge, absolutely. So I'm grateful for your 24 years in the game. I'm grateful for your foresight 24 years ago and all that you have endured, because you've come through some really hard times. And so now the mountaintop is so close, because look where we are right now. And people have got to listen. Why? Okay, I want to talk to Governor DeSantis. Why are you trying to keep people so dumb? Why? What is it about truth, right? To keep people dumb. I deal with white people every day that don't know the history, and now they're trying to become better and teach their kids, but what is happening is you're trying to keep your kids dumb so that the truth never gets out there. But you are doing the opposite, and I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful.
I think I heard a lot of gratitude to you, for you. Thank you, and thank you. Yeah. Any final words about why this better together? Well, we're doing this stuff together. Any final words about why it's better that we do this work together?
Yeah, I think it was emphasized earlier that this is not just a white person experience, a white person conference. I think the title sometimes throws people off.
Yes,
being the white privilege conference. I mean, the title is a signal of rigor. If you can't receive this title, this is not a place for you.
See.
So it's almost necessary that people get warned at the door. Okay, so not a warning again that we're harming people, but a warning that work is being done here. Like if you're not participating in workshops on your phone, people will say, "Well, why? Whoa, fam, yeah, like we're here to work." Or if you, as a presenter, or maybe saying some things folks disagree with, you're not gonna just sit in there and assume you're the know-all and be respectful and not speak up. They have the right to say, "Whoa, can you explain? Wait a minute, that's not my experience. Whoa, I'm not sure I agree with that." And so it's really, as mentioned earlier, the experience. I appreciate that, because people always ask me, what is the measurement of success? Is it the number of participants? I mean, that always helps, when you have a lot of people, when you're in a workshop presenting, the room is full. I mean, it's good for your ego, maybe, but we know from a learning perspective, that's not really what's happening when you got 60 people in the room. All right, so for me, the measurement of success at the end is the people's experience. And the ones that come back. And the ongoing, returning presenters, especially because they're not getting paid to be here. Right. They're coming to present their work and do their work. And I think also, right, like I'm not striving for the perfect program. I mean, I'm not striving for the perfect lunchbox, right? Like, we want error. We want human engagement, right? And even for those of us who are, like so polished around the work, when, the projector goes out,
we just keep it
which
moving.
happens, right? The way you react there, like the people are watching.
Keep it moving.
Right? Like when things aren't perfect, people get to see who you are.
Right.
Right? When the clock is not operating by the framework that's laid out in the program, and you start acting a fool because you don't trust black leadership that we know what we're doing, that it's not built into the program. I mean, people get to see who you are. So I'm really just appreciative that folks are coming here not because of one speaker or one workshop. They're repeatedly coming here, sometimes coming here for the first time for the white privilege conference experience. And so I, again, just continue to be blessed. This is not something I imagined myself doing as a kid. Divine inspiration.
Divine inspiration.
I think in addition to that coming from something far greater than me, it's important for people to understand unapologetic is so critical. It's who I am, and that who I am is going to be consistently a part of the program day to day, every day. So it's Black genius, Black excellence in its founding, but multicultural community in its production. So thank you for 24 years. And some of y'all been grinding at it with me. And I think it's important to come to grips with the fact that America has shown us that this conference will probably be needed another 25 years.
Oh, yes.
So we're ready.
We're ready. Yeah, thank you so much. More to come. Yes. Thank you.
More to come.
Yes.
Down with the queen.
That's 5 minutes.